That's fine. All right, we'll get rolling here. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the second in our series of webinars for allied industry. And we're calling this series the Farm Broadcasting Forum. And the purpose is to connect NAFB allied industry members with broadcasters and kind of have a discussion on topics of mutual interest. It's meant to be a discussion forum. We're not really doing formal presentations or anything. It's just kind of using this virtual space to get together on an occasional basis. So today's topic, we believe, is really timely. The topic is titled Reaching Farmers Through Ag Broadcasting. And today we're going to explore kind of how to reach farmers with ag broadcasting, maybe to discuss some of the best practices and what you may want to consider as you're planning your campaigns for the coming year. I don't know about you, but we're in the middle of planning for some of our clients, for some of our ag clients. And so this is a really timely topic. We're going to leave a little bit of time at the end also for Tom Brand, NAFB Executive Director, and he's going to give us an update on a couple things, including the upcoming NAFB convention. So again, I'm Gardner Hatch with Woodruff, and together with Shannon Yokley, she's there on screen. Shannon,
Hi,
you want
guys.
to there? Shannon, we are going to be facilitating the discussion this afternoon for the next hour. I am currently serving my second and final year as the allied industry representative on the NAFB board, and Shannon is in her first year representing AIC on the board. So together we represent you, the allied industry members of NAFB. And as always, we would love to hear your input on whether it's webinar topic ideas or anything else that we can do to make your NAFB membership even more valuable. So this afternoon's event is for you. It's meant to be interactive, kind of an informal format that provides you with some information and updates that you can use in your work life. And questions are encouraged. We will pause at certain intervals to provide you with an opportunity to ask a panelist a question or just ask a general question. And then you can also drop a question in the chat too, and we'll try to moderate that and get to as many as we can. So basically the format is we're going to kind of kick it off with introductions and then start with a couple questions. But as we go along, if you have questions, we'll just kind of roll with those too. And we'll get to as many as we can. We are recording the session, so we'll have this as a resource for you afterwards as well. And then just one additional housekeeping item, if you could mute your microphone, unless you're asking a question, that will also help with the webinar experience this afternoon. All right, so we're going to jump into it. We all know we're ag communications professionals. We know the importance of ag broadcasting and reaching our farm audiences. And research has shown that for those who listen to ag radio, it's really the primary source of daily ag news throughout the year for farmers. They listen to it for news, they listen to it for weather, and they listen to it for market insights. And the reason they do that is because of their local broadcaster, who's that trusted source of information. That is something that shows up time and time again in the research that's done, that trust factor. So how do we as ag communicators maximize our investment in this medium? As I said, many of us are planning our 24 campaigns, and so we invited 3 panelists to join in this discussion. And the 3 panelists were selected because they really represent 3 different perspectives for us. So we're going to meet them. What I'm going to do is introduce each of the panelists individually, and then ask them to kind of give just a short overview of their media network, if I could do that. Anita, I'd like to start with you. Anita Vanderwert is a veteran ag marketing and media sales professional, and she brings great perspective in connecting farm broadcasting program to our goal of reaching farmers. She currently serves as business development director for Brownfield Ag News, which reaches growers throughout more than 500 affiliate stations in numerous states. Anita's role is she works closely with the network sales team to find ag broadcasting solutions for Brownfield's advertising partners. And Anita, I was wondering if you could just give me a little bit more information about kind of Brownfield as an ag broadcasting medium for this group.
Sure, Gardner. So Brownfield started in '72. It was a fun little story. Clyde went to a group of venture capitalists and ended up growing it into quite a little media empire, doing everything from farm news, state news, as well as collegiate sports. So we started 50 years ago, and back then it was literally pick up a phone and call the radio station with the farm markets. There was him and Derry Brownfield, and on the hour they would pick up the phone and they'd be calling the radio stations, giving them the market reports on a landline. So we started out in '72. Since then, we do have, as you mentioned, over 500 radio stations throughout the North Central states. So when we're talking Brownfield, we are the largest farm radio network, but we concentrate just in the Midwest. Our bread and butter is corn, soybeans, wheat, cattle, hogs. That's where our broadcasters shine, and that's where we try to make sure we have enough radio stations in each of the states we represent to really move the needle. We have 12 full-time farm broadcasters. All they do is farm news 24/7, and they are in their state representing their farmers, informing the farmers of what's going on in the state, but yet they work collaboratively and make sure that they get all the national news covered as well. So we've got quite the crew of farm broadcasters, and we have sales reps scattered around the Midwest as well that do a bang-up job helping clients meet whatever kind of needs when they need to reach farmers. Our idea is simply, we don't care how farmers consume the information. We just want to make sure we make it available to them.
Great. Thank you, Anita. The second panelist is Carey Martin. And most of you know he's a longtime farm broadcaster, and he brings experience as manager of broadcast networks in Louisiana and Texas. So today he brings insights as an ag broadcast journalist, including farm programming and digital platforms as well. 25 years ago, I looked this up, Carey, it was 25 years ago when you founded the Louisiana Farm Bureau Radio Network, and you grew that into one of the top rated farm networks in the state. And then it was in 2019 when you moved west to manage operations at the Texas Farm Bureau Radio Network, where you are today, and I'm also managing the relations with the 65 affiliate stations. So, Carey, if any additional insights into what you're doing today as a farm broadcaster and at the Texas Radio Network that you can add?
Yeah, I can tell you this. When I got here 4 years ago, we had 65 stations, as you say. Today, we have 140 stations. So
there we go. Okay.
We've been very fortunate to grow it quite a bit over the last few years. But yes, I'm in charge of all aspects of the network, affiliate relations, programming. We do have 140 stations, and practically all of those are locally owned small town radio stations that are serving their community. We do have a few stations in larger markets, but I'm proud to say that out of that 140, 6 of those are corporately owned, by the big radio corporations. 6. That's it. And as a side note, those 6 cause me more headaches than the other 136, 134. But anyway, we kind of pride ourselves on that because we believe in supporting small town, locally owned, community serving radio stations. That is a big part of what we do. We want to provide them with the best farm programming in Texas. We also share some of our revenue with them. We've got a program set up to where we do some revenue sharing. It's not much, we don't send them a whole lot of money, but when you start talking to some of these owners, every dollar counts in keeping those stations on the air. So we do, our bread and butter is short form programming. We do 1, 2, 3 minute programs. We do 10 of those a day. We've also ventured out into some longer form programming. We added a 30-minute morning show that runs on about 50 of our stations. We also have a weekend show, 15-minute weekend show that's been on the air for almost 80 years, well before the founding of this network. Texas Farm Bureau started that about 80 years ago. And it's doing very well also. We think that's the longest running, syndicated ag program in the country. I don't know that for sure, but I don't know if there's any other, specific shows that can say they've been on the air for 80 years every single weekend, but I don't know if it's true. It's a nice little bragging point. But we have expanded our programming. We've expanded our radio stations and keeping that focus on serving the farm audience as well as serving and supporting those local radio stations.
Great. Thank you, Carey. And we'll be getting back to you with some questions too. Finally, Brent Adams. I met Brent Adams a few years ago, and to me, he's a real ag broadcasting innovator. He's an experienced journalist and an award-winning content creator with a track record across multiple communications platforms. But it was in 2018 when he broke into ag broadcasting and really broke barriers by producing a radio show and a podcast that combines agriculture news with country music programming. And so today, as president of Rural Strong Media, he oversees the creation of syndicated TV and radio content and also podcasts. He's host of Tractors and Troubadours. I love that name, Brent, by the way. And that's a radio show, a podcast, and also live stream featuring ag industry newsmakers, educational features, and also traditional country music. So it's a unique blend of formats there. Brent, is there anything I'm missing here? Anything you would like to highlight with what you're doing these days?
Well, you pretty much summed it all up there. So there's not a lot more room. What I'm trying to do right now is find that group of angel investors that Anita talked about, so I can hire Carey away and get some of the growth in terrestrial radio that they've experienced down there in Texas, because that's been phenomenal to watch.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you. You cannot have Carey. We've got him in Texas, and we're not letting him go anywhere.
I hear that. Well, I tell you, yeah, that's where my focus has been. We launched in November 2021 and just been trying to grow it slowly and steadily as we go. The bread and butter is still Tractors and Troubadours, which is heard on terrestrial radio in Indiana, Kentucky, and Kansas. And we're also growing into Georgia as well. And just trying to, cast that net as we go here, and also have gotten into more of the live streaming through Rural Strong Live, also through a contract that we have to do a live stream on the music side called Fort Worth Musical Moments, which goes once a week. And then another one called Kurt Ryle's Road Stories that we do out of Nashville. We've also got a couple of TV programs that are in production right now, one for PBS affiliates, the other for cable and streaming network that we hopefully will be able to share more about here in the coming weeks. So really just trying to find some spaces where other folks aren't. The one challenge within that is that everybody and their uncle's out trying to do ag media content now. And even if you looked at the landscape 5 years ago, it wasn't necessarily the case here. And there's a lot of really good ag content out there. So, our mission is kind of twofold. One is to speak to farmers and ranchers and others in agriculture, to kind of hip them to what's going on in the industry. But the other part of that is, and we use the country music as a hook, is to try to bring in the consumer, because farmers and ranchers need their neighbors as advocates. And, as we've seen kind of laid bare through the pandemic and so forth, people are becoming acutely interested in, the path that their food is taking from farm to fork. So, we share the challenges in the industry, but we also share the opportunities and the innovations in the industry, which are quite remarkable. So really trying to serve both of those audiences and do it over a number of different platforms.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Brent. Just a reminder, we're going to kick it off with questions here, but if you have one of your own, throw it in the chat or go off mute and go ahead and jump in and ask a question. Shannon, I'm going to defer over to you to kick us off here.
Sounds good, Gardner. Thank you. Anita, I'm going to start with you again, just because you did a really good job and it touches on our first question. Can you touch a little bit more on your audience? You described your layout for the network, but who is you, or how would you describe your audience? And then what is the best way to reach them? And then same goes if you guys want to answer in the same order.
As I mentioned, we started 50 years ago, so we have been in the farming broadcast community for a really long time. What happens is it's very similar to what Carey says. A lot of the radio stations serve the C&D counties, the local small market counties where farmers actually live. We also try to stay out of major metros. We have clients that don't want their advertising messages heard in the major metros. They don't need to know about biting and sucking lice when it comes to cow-calf operations. They don't want to know about the chemicals that are put on for crop and herbicide control of the crops in the larger markets. So our growth has also been in the smaller communities where farmers actually live. Because we're where farmers are, where their homes are, where their families are, where their traditions are, radio has been a part of their life. So that's who we concentrate on, and that's who we try to serve with all of our farm broadcasts. One thing that we have noticed when it comes to the people who listen to us regularly and research, you'll see that the farm broadcasting community, we have a very loyal audience because there's such a tie with the local farm broadcasters. And that doesn't matter if you're in Montana, if you're in Iowa, wherever you are, there is such a trust in the farm broadcasters. And that's the reason farmers always tune in. Recently, we all know newspapers have suffered a huge decline in these smaller markets. That's been a big boom for us. Not that we're happy that newspapers are disappearing. More news outlets are always better. I'm still a journalism grad. I love the old newspaper, but as those have disappeared in those C&D counties, it's been a nice boom to the small local rural radio stations. They need to turn into your local radio stations to find out school lunch menus, who's died, what's going on in their local communities. And that's the audience that we seem to serve well.
Perfect. What is the best way to reach them? Are there any, beyond radio, are there any things?
Our mantra has been from the beginning of time. I've been at Brownfield for 20 some odd years. We don't care how farmers get the news, how they want to consume it. Just so happens radio has been the staple, and that is our number one priority, is making sure our radio stations are there. But if they want to get it online at brownfieldagnews.com, if they want to get it on agriamerica.com, it's a 24/7 streaming channel. If they want to get it via podcast, we want to help them provide the news that they need. And in any way they can get it, we want to be there for them. And, the other thing that we need to remember is when it comes to farm radio, the younger generation is listening to farm radio. We can't avoid that, and we can't ignore that. Everyone assumes the younger group's not listening to your small local radio station, and that has never been proven. When you look at the research, those under 50 are spending just as many minutes with farm radio as those that are 50 and above. It didn't decrease. And when you look at the trend line, we have held steady. And everyone assumed that everyone was going online and digital, but the research does not show that. They are still very loyal, small, local, hometown radio station fans, which is huge. And we need to make sure that we serve that audience.
Thank you, Anita.
Is that what you wanted, Shannon?
Yes, nope, that's
Okay.
exactly what I wanted. Thank you. How about you, Carey? Tell us about your audience, and then the best way that you connect with them as well.
We're in Texas, so we have a big audience, right? It's all big here in Texas. But we are fortunate. This is a big state, and it's a big agricultural state. We're number one in cattle production. We produce half the nation's cotton crop here in Texas, number one sheep and goat producing state. So, our audience, I always tell our team, when you get on that mic right there, you are talking to that full-time farmer and rancher in his truck, in his tractor, on his combine, spray rig, wherever it may be, listening to the radio. That's who you're talking to. So make sure that everything we put on the air is relevant for those full-time producers. Our goal is to give them information that makes their operations run better and in turn improves their lives. We have put out information before that, I believe has saved lives in some cases. When certain things are going on. So, that's our goal, is to make sure we're talking to that farmer or rancher. I have heard in my career, and I hear it today. Some people say, well, we have a responsibility to educate the non-farm public about agriculture. I may be the black sheep here, but I disagree with that. That is not my goal or my purpose when I'm on the air. The non-farm public, if I'm putting out a 3-minute news report, farm news report, the non-farm public gets 57 minutes of that radio hour. And so for that 3 minutes, that little short 3 minutes, that's the farmer's time. And so I make sure that, we're speaking to that farmer. Now, of course, a lot of non-farm public hears it, and hopefully they pick something up, something educational, but our focus is on that farmer. We have a huge audience here in Texas just because of the scope of agriculture and the scope of farming here in Texas. We've got in the beef industry, for example, we have all segments of the industry. We're fortunate to have seed stock producers. We're fortunate to have cow-calf producers. We're fortunate to have stocker producers. We have feedlots. We have the packing plants. They're all right here in the state. And, we strive to provide them with information as well. As far as, the best way to reach them, we take a multi-pronged approach. Now, we're here talking about radio, but here in-house, we also put out a traditional print publication, Texas Agriculture. It goes to over 100,000 people every month. We also have active social media accounts that reach both farmers and non-farmers. We have, digital newsletter that goes out every day to reach them. We have our traditional radio programs that we do that I've talked about earlier. We also do a daily podcast, that 30-minute morning show that I talked to you about earlier. We will also release that as a podcast. And kind of on Anita's point, you would think, oh, well, that's great for the young people. They like listening to the podcast. Well, guess what? I've got 70-year-old farmers that tell me, man, I love that podcast every day because I can't always catch all your radio reports. So, I mean, it's not just for the young audience. It's for all of them. They all listen to the podcast, anywhere, from young folks all the way up to, the 80-year-old guys who are trying to get out of it. They all listen to it. And it's just another way that we can serve that audience and bring that information. So, we like to feel like here under this one roof, we have multiple ways that we can reach that farm audience for a potential advertiser.
Perfect. Thank you, Carey. That's a perfect bridge on podcasts. Over to Brent. I know we talked a little bit about yours to start out with, but talk about your audience for that podcast as well as all of your other media offerings, and then your best way to reach your audience.
Right. Yeah. I don't think anything that I'm doing is anything different than what we've already heard here. And I do think that the audience runs the gamut, and the challenge is just to have something that's going to appeal to everybody. I do think radio is still the king. And to Anita's point, the numbers really buck the trends that you're seeing in some of the metro areas. It shows that there's a huge following still for terrestrial radio in rural America. And that is very encouraging. And that's something that anybody who's listening that's looking where to put the ad dollars, I would encourage them to keep it. And I know we've been very vocal as an organization with NAFB about the future of AM radio and radio in rural America. And, for anybody that wants to come into your shop and tell you that radio's dead or radio has a diminishing value in rural America, that's a lie. I mean, it's very strong, and that's where I think the lion's share of those dollars should be placed, because it isn't just the older farmer, the average age farmer, even who's listening. It's a younger farmer, but I think you also have to. I have young kids. I see how they consume content, which is in many ways vastly different from the way folks are consuming it who are my age or older. So. You really have to be able to reach them on social media, both paid and organic. You have to be able to reach them through YouTube. You have to be able to reach them through various mediums. And, that's kind of a focus that I have going forward, is without spreading yourself too thin and diluting your product, is how do you connect with people through those various mediums.
Thank you, Brent. Perfect. Before we jump into more questions in depth, I just wanted to check with the audience. Do you guys have any questions you'd like to chime in on? No? Okay. I'm glad we have a really cool topic of getting the most out of your radio buy or media buys. Whoever wants to lead this one, I suppose. How can agencies or companies or associations get the most from their ag broadcasting campaign? I know it's kind of a wide question, but any tips on that? I guess from the Brownfield side, Anita, do you wanna? I know you always have something good to add.
Yeah, when it comes to farm broadcasting, if you have, of course, I'm always going to be an advocate that farm broadcasting has to be your base buy. When it comes to reaching farmers, especially farmers in the Midwest that I'm more familiar with, but I think it's true for farmers across the US, radio is in their truck, it's in their tractor, it's everywhere they are throughout the day. It's in every tractor. When we do surveys and we do roundtable discussions and tailgate talks that we host quarterly, you can ask farmers how many radios are on your farm. And this usually blows the younger generation away because usually it'll be 20 plus radios in their home, in their shop, in their vehicles, all the trucks, all the tractors, all the combines. They are everywhere with the farm broadcaster. It is with them throughout the day. So biggest tip when it comes to buying farm broadcast is making sure you're getting enough frequency. Find out where exactly you want to reach and then hit it with enough frequency. Drives me crazy. Radio will always be a frequency buy if you go in at 5 spots per week. That I don't believe in 40 spots per week, as we have had some people on the political side that try to come in at 40 spots a week, but you aren't going to move the needle with 5 spots a week. Try to condense it. When it comes to the biggest tip I have, figure out where you want to make a serious difference and hit it with enough frequency to really make a difference. Don't come in with a light schedule and spread it out over a long period of time. Condense it, hit it heavy, make sure you're hitting the people that you need to hit where they are. But make sure you don't skimp on the frequency. I'd rather you go to a more narrow focus and just hit 1 or 2 states than trying to be everywhere without the frequency that you need to really make a difference. Remember, everybody on this panel that's involved with farm broadcasting, we want every client to be successful. So we are going to make recommendations to make sure you see results. And when it comes to measuring, I know we had talked some about measuring prior to starting this discussion. Make sure your radio ads drive them someplace, drive them online. When you have an ad and you've got a great message, make sure you're telling them in every radio ad where to go to get more information. Radio is frequency. It keeps your message top of mind. You have sales reps out there on the client side. You want those sales reps in with your decision makers every single day. That's where we can back them up. It's physically not possible for your sales reps to visit with every one of their key decision makers. That's why you use farm broadcaster, because we are with them every day. When they're making the decisions. Make sure you're on the radio so that we are prepping the area before your sales rep comes in. They've already heard about your product. They've already gone to the location you've driven them to find out more. Your sales rep's ready to close the deal when it goes in. So that's the reason you've got to have farm broadcasting and farm radio in your buys, is because we're simply with the farmer every single day. Is that what you wanted?
Sounds great. Yes.
Okay.
Carey, Brent?
Yeah, I could add to that. I believe the most effective way for an advertiser to approach working with a farm broadcaster, radio station, or radio network is to approach it as a partnership. I mean, that's the way I look at it. We're in this together. Yes, your advertising helps us keep going, and at the same time, we want to do what we can to help you to sell your products. It's a real partnership. However, we've had agencies come to us before and say, okay, we're going to buy this much. You're going to give us this much free. You're going to do this many interviews. This is what the interviews are going to contain. You're going to run them in your programming as editorial, just making all these demands. And to me, that's not a partnership. It irritates me to tell you the truth. I'm not going to be your advocate if you come in and treat me like that as your slave, not your partner. However, we have a lot of clients who work with us as partners, and we are happy to help them in any way we can. I see Sarah Winters on this call, the Woodruff folks. Sarah's worked with me very closely with one of their clients here in Texas, and I've seen it very much as a partnership. We've worked together, giving some value added, doing some interviews that we feel like are not just paid or free commercials. We try to make good editorial content with their experts. In fact, just next week, I'm going down to South Texas, where one of our biggest clients has a big field day going on. I'm going to cover that field day because, to me, it's my part of our partnership. They work very closely with us. I can get some awesome editorial content out of that field day with some great agronomists, lots of farmers that are going to be there. So it is good for me that way. But at the same time, it's a way that I can work with that client as a partner and try to promote their products and their services. So, that's one piece of advice I'd give. If you're working with a farm broadcaster or a radio network or station, approach it as a partnership. And I think you'll be surprised at how well of a response you'll get from that farm broadcaster and their willingness to help you instead of you just dictating, what you want them to do.
So it's really kind of bringing them into the fold a little bit too, isn't it, Carey? As opposed to treating the broadcaster as a vendor. Hey, bringing the broadcaster or the outlet into kind of some of the planning. This is what we want to achieve in Texas, for example, and then working together on it.
Absolutely. And, with, we're willing to work with clients, with Texas being such a big geographical state. I mean, it's really like about 4 different states all within one boundary. East Texas agriculture is 180 degrees different from Texas Panhandle agriculture versus South Texas. It's all different. So we're willing to work with clients, if they want one geography. You know what? If you want to focus on the Panhandle, let's do that. We'll focus on that. We'll work with radio stations in the Panhandle. We'll talk with your experts that are in the Panhandle, and we'll really focus on that area for that product, for that client. We're very willing to do that. We're willing to be a partner in it for sure.
I would just add to that. I think I must see the reflection of my notes in Carey's glasses here, because I was going to say the same thing about collaboration. Where I made the biggest strides here has been collaboration, because I think the thing that we see every now and again is that there's projects that people have on their whiteboard that they don't pull the trigger on for one reason or another. Either they don't have the manpower, they have people leave, they get waylaid by field days and other things out of the office, and they just don't get to it. And rather than taking them most of the time, rather than taking them a media kit or a rate card or saying, here's the menu, take it or leave it, the first question is, okay, what do you guys have that you want to execute that hasn't been executed? Because one thing I hear from a lot of agencies is, we want to try something different. We want to explore a little bit. We want to kick the tires on this or that idea. And I think there's plenty of opportunity. I can't speak for everybody's shop, because everybody's different in the capabilities that they have to be able to devote manpower to those type of projects. But I think it's a great space to be able to create, to go out and try something that might be just a little bit out of the ordinary and see if it flies.
When it comes to tips, one other quick thing, tips on media buying that I need to just throw in here real quick, or it would be a shame if I didn't. One of the tips that everyone needs to remember, if you're a media buyer, don't put down you want to be on drive time, because none of us knows what a drive time is for a farmer. So get rid of that line. When it says we want it to air in drive time, you're going to have to describe what you think drive time is for a farmer, because that's all day long in our world.
that may be something, that question from somebody who doesn't understand agriculture, maybe.
Fair enough, Gardner. So what
Yeah.
we're saying is farmers, a lot of times the radio is with them all day long. They don't have a drive time because they're usually in their truck or they're in their shop. And we're not sure how to define what a farmer's drive time is, because he could be going to town at 10 o'clock in the morning. He could be going to town at 3 in the afternoon. So putting
Yep.
down drive time really doesn't give us much guidance.
Yeah.
All depends on when something breaks down. That's the drive time. When something's broken, I need parts.
Are there any programs, again, any questions from the audience before I go on to my next one? Sorry. Okay. Any programs that you guys are particularly proud of, or innovations you guys have created for your audience and listeners that you deem successful? And then how do you measure that, those successes?
Well, I can brag a little bit on our programming because
Do it.
I'm a little biased here, but we really have some unique programs, I think, that we put on the air. First off, I mentioned Texas Panhandle agriculture. That is the biggest concentration of agriculture in the state, the Panhandle and the Southern Plains down to Lubbock. In fact, the Lubbock area is called the world's largest cotton patch. We've got more cotton concentrated in one little area around Lubbock, Texas, than anywhere else on the planet. Same thing with the feedlots and the meat packers up in the Amarillo area. So we focus on that a lot. And one thing that I realized right off the bat a few years ago when I got here was that, man, it is hard to cover that big concentration of agriculture in the Panhandle when we're down here in Waco, Texas. So one of the first things I did is I contracted with a well-respected former farm broadcaster up there to do a daily show for us, strictly focusing on Panhandle agriculture, just that one little area of the state. That area is what's called, a lot of that area is what's called the Cap Rock of Texas. It's a big old plateau that sits up high and it's flat as a rock. You can, stand up on a can of soup and you can see for, about 1,800 miles. Not a tree in sight, but we got that one guy up there on the ground, boots on the ground, covering just that area of the state for us. Every single radio station that we have in that area runs his show because it's specific for the agriculture in that area. We also have a veterinarian that comes in and does a daily show for us called Texas Vet News. And he talks about, large animal vet issues, horses, cattle, sheep, hogs sometime. But it's Texas Vet News. He's been doing it for 20 years. He comes in and records like 2 weeks of it at a time. And then we air one each day, but it's specifically about veterinary issues, animal health, all of those things. Now I have had to rein him in a little bit because, he's a veterinarian and he tends to get a little graphic. I've had stations say, you know what? I was eating my lunch the other day and Dr. Judd came on talking about all the various sexual organs of a cow. And I just don't think that's appropriate at lunchtime. So, I had to tell him, look, this is a radio show. You got a lot of people listening that don't know what all these details are. But anyway, good show. Another specialty show we have, we call it Walking the Pens. And it's a guy here in Texas that has been doing livestock auction reports for over 25 years. And we have contracted with him, and he does a daily livestock auction from a different spot in Texas every day to give the auction barn results. And so that's very popular, with cattlemen who are listening. So we've got some real specialty programming like that, in addition to our regular markets and farm news that we run. So I think there's something a little unique about us and something we're proud of.
How do you measure your success? A lot of that I'm sure is word of mouth, talking to your audience and listeners. Do you value metrics in that realm of things, or how do you recognize that value?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can, word of mouth, what you hear, feedback that you get is always valuable. But there's no way to actually quantify, that type of feedback. But I still believe very strongly in the AMR. I do. I believe that's the best form of audience measurement that we have in this industry. So we rely heavily on it. We spend a lot of money on that AMR every other year, and we use it to drive some of our decisions. When we look to see which radio stations farmers listen to the most and what areas of the state they're in and what, crops and livestock are grown in those areas. So we use it internally for a lot of the programming decisions that we make on, where we're going to concentrate, what we're going to concentrate on. And I also believe it's very effective, for the advertising community. That is a way that we can quantify, actual numbers on paper or on a disc, or to find out where farmers are listening, which stations they're listening to. And so I would encourage everyone to make use of that. It's free. We pay for it. Didn't cost you a dime. Make use of that when you're making buying decisions. And again, we're willing to partner with you. If you have a list of stations that you look on the AMR and you say, well, we want to buy you, but we want to, can you give us, the top so many stations, in this part of the state? We can work with you on that for sure.
And that information is available on the portal, isn't it, Tom? On the NAFB site, the planner.
Yeah, the planner.
Yeah, that's right.
Tom, is it still in the works to redo all of that, the website and the planner and all of that?
It is. The NAFB website itself is just starting to go through some changes on back end and then eventually front end, and that will marry in with the planner itself.
Good.
Yeah, so anybody who's not familiar with the planner, it's a resource available for NAFB members, and there's a wealth of information that you can look at. Some of the things that Carey was talking about, where you can, as you're planning your media placements, you can take a look at that. So if you're not familiar with it, you can connect to it through the NAFB website and just explore around and see what it can do for you.
If you have any questions on that, Gardner and I can help you on that as well.
Absolutely.
Yep. Anita, Brent, do you have anything to add in terms of any new programming you're proud of? Measurables?
Yeah, no, I think, you guys mentioned the podcast, that's one that's, been kind of the driver. And then we do the radio show behind that. And kind of the method behind the madness is to give a 30-minute weekly version, condensed, and then send people back to the podcast for the full version of that. So we can go longer form on some of these interviews. We can go, 7 to 15 minutes if they warrant that, and go a little bit deeper and a little more technical. And you can look at things like downloads, but that's kind of a vanity statistic. I think there's a lot of what we're tracking is what things look like on social media, what kind of not just what kind of engagement we're getting, but where that engagement is coming from, so we can get as granular, because that's the one thing we get asked a lot from agencies that don't really get it. Well, podcast, can you tell me who's listening? How long are they listening? Where are they listening from specifically? And those numbers aren't really there. We're trying to put together as good a representation as we can to kind of give that to them. But other ways that we can send them through the website or through social media, so we got a better look through Google Analytics or any other tools to be able to drill down and kind of parse that a little bit better is kind of what we look at there.
The way we do it at Brownfield is we are set up like the national radio news network, say Fox News. You have 3 minutes of news, 1 minute commercial. That's the way Brownfield is also set up. We give 3 minutes of farm news, 1 minute commercial. Our programs range anywhere from the state specific news a couple times a day, from a dairy update if they have dairy cattle, to the livestock report, to the commodity opening, the commodity close. If you're a radio station, you have a choice between 35 different programs. You can air all of them or half a dozen of them throughout the day. You pick and choose what's most relevant to your audience, but every radio station, there's 35 new programs every single day of the week that they get to run on their radio station. The reason we're set up as a national network like the Fox or ABC is because it's a lot more inexpensive for us to deliver it as one state at a time. So you can buy one state or multiple states. We will let you geo-target down to specific areas if you need to, but it's a lot more inexpensive if you're going to buy a whole state if we're on a wired system. So that's why we're set up the way we are with our radio stations. When it comes to unique programming, I agree with Brent. We do a lot of here's a 1-minute interview, and then go here for more information. Go to this site to get the real hardcore, in-depth, deep dive that you're after. And we have found that to be very effective when the radio spots are driving them to a specific area. As far as something that we also do podcasts for clients. We do some podcasts on our own, but agree with Brent. Again, we just don't have the listenership that we would like to have on some of our podcasts. What we find is, surprisingly, how many clients still produce podcasts, but yet they don't use radio to let farmers know that the podcast exists. So why are you spending so much money on producing podcasts without backing it up with a radio campaign? So people actually know you've got a great podcast and how you can find that podcast. Hopefully, we have launched agriamerica.com. It's a 24/7 country music, farm news throughout the day. It's farm news, not just Brownfield. It's a lot of different people that are providing farm news, bringing farm news into that. That is also will be an ag podcast repository. Anybody that wants to put their ag podcasts on there, they will also be able to find those on agriamerica.com. Again, we're just launching this. It's still in the beginning stages. But there are a lot of great ag podcasts out there. How can we help farmers? What can we do to serve farmers so they can find the information they need? And hopefully that'll be another way they can do that.
Great. Thanks, Anita. I'm going to address a couple of the questions here we have in chat. One is from Sarah, kind of from a PR perspective. What goes into a good media pitch? Can you give an example of something that caught your eye, like a pitch that you received that was really good, and then just generally, how can PR people help you as a broadcaster?
Yeah, to try to tackle that one here. I think, off the bat, anything you can do to be timely, like we're seeing a lot right now, get your late season fungicide applications in now. Anytime you can come in as a subject matter expert, rather than starting off with a hard sell off the bat, that's effective to me. If you're bringing in a good agronomist who can speak to things going on in different regions, and I think we're all open to giving you kind of the soft sell on the back end of that. Hey, what do you have that can help, and how can folks engage with you? I don't think anybody's opposed to that, if it's done tastefully. But, the ones that really turn me off, I could probably tell you more than the ones that turn me on are the ones that want to use you constantly for, as they call, earned media, when they don't want to reciprocate in any shape or form. Now, that's me putting on the owner advertising hat there. A lot of people love the gratuitous free press, but then when it comes time to pay for it, don't really have a lot of use for you, to be honest with you. So, just a consideration there.
And I'm going to echo and back that up too. I get PR pitches in my inbox every day. And there's a real difference in them. Some of the best stories that I have put on the air in the last 3 years have come from PR folks who have brought me really good stories in the state of Texas. Hey, one of our agronomists told us about this happening in this part of the state. Would you like to talk to him about it? Well, heck yeah. I mean, if there's something unique going on in that area of the state, I would love to talk to him about it. And it put on some great stories over the years because that PR professional is not contacting me saying, hey, will you run a free 60-second interview in your programming just promoting our products? No, I'm not going to do that. And at the same time, And what Brent said, if I see this as a partnership. If you're not an advertising partner of ours, I'm probably not gonna do an interview with your folks. That's just the way it is. And I don't mean to, to be, arrogant about that, but again, it's a partnership. If I'm going to give you free airtime, our airtime, we've added it up before. Our airtime is valued at over $2,000 a minute. So every minute of airtime I give you in our programming, I'm giving you $2,000 for free.
Wow.
If you don't spend any advertising with us, it's hard for me to justify that. But if you're one of our advertising partners, I'm happy to work with you, especially if you're giving me a good story and not asking me to pitch products. I'm not going to pitch products. I'm just not. But I will sure use our agronomist for a good story in a heartbeat, because those folks are experts. They know what they're talking about. They're in a specific part of the state. They know what's going on in their part of the state. Heck yeah, I'll be glad to interview them. So, that's kind of the take that I have on it. If you're a PR professional and you want to send me a good story that we could use your experts for, happy to work with you. If you're not doing business with us and you just send me a pitch to promote your brand, I'm probably just going to hit the delete button.
Yeah. Good, honest insights. Thank you. We have a couple more minutes, and I want to leave a couple minutes for Tom here at the end. But another really good question here is around the impact of the elections on your inventory in ag radio. I don't know, Anita, if that's something that you could
Sure.
address. Yeah.
Sure. One thing that everyone needs to remember when it comes to elections is typically in a majority of our states anyway, and I know it's similar in a lot of the other parts of the US as well, half of the audience or half of the people actually reside outside of major metros, which makes C&D radio stations the key when it comes to elections. If half your audience can't be reached in the major metros, and you need to reach that audience with a timely message to really change a campaign outcome, we're probably going to be the one you go to will be your local hometown C&D radio stations. So yes, inventory is always tight. If the race is tight, ag radio inventory will be tight, typically just because half of the population usually lives outside of the major metros. They've got to reach the population. They come in heavy because they know they can really move the needle on campaigns. So yes, you need to buy early, and you need to get the commitment, and you need to make sure that whoever you're working with will say, if your order's in, we are not going to bump you just because political comes in and says, hey, I'll give you twice the rate if you'll bump them. We don't bump our ag clients, but you've got to get your order in first, because once campaign starts, they're relentless.
Okay. Good to know. We're going to squeeze one more question in because I think it's a good one. I think it'll be a pretty easy answer. This one's for you, Carey. You were talking about kind of the non-advertisers. So Michelle has a question. So in that situation where a company cannot afford to advertise, would you still be open to getting a list of experts from that company simply to reach out for an article?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's not a problem at all. Be glad to, to take that list and hang on to it. Who knows?
Yep.
Something may happen in the state or in that part of the state where your folks are that I may need some information on. So yeah, that's a ready-made source list that I could pick up the phone and call. So yeah, I'm not opposed to that at all.
Okay.
It's just that, if you're sending me constant pitches, I'm it's going to take a lot to get me to put them on the air, but yeah, I'll be glad to take a list.
Okay.
And I don't think sometimes people understand just how many pitches we get, especially,
Yeah, true.
surrounding these farm shows. Like we've got Farm Progress coming up here in 2 weeks. And I mean, I think everybody decided they were going to start hitting the button here last Monday. And my God, I mean, I've just been inundated with stuff, and kind of the trend now is everybody wants to schedule everything while you're there for it's a 3-day show, but everybody wants to pack it into the first day and a half. And literally, I'm getting pitches saying, hey, come out to my breakfast at 6 a.m. on the first day, when I'm staying an hour away from the grounds there. And, that's a big commitment for me to drag out there at 5:30 in the morning to do something for something I'm not getting paid anything for. Those are all considerations that have to be made. But man, just the volume of pitches that we get around some of these shows are crazy. I just can't get to all of them, to be honest.
Great, thanks, Brent. And that kind of leads into, the next webinar that we are planning is right before NAFB convention and trade talk. And we're going to do another webinar on trade talk tips. And I think we could talk a little bit about that, kind of what goes into good pitches, in addition to just some best practices for trade talk. I do want to leave a couple of minutes. I'm sorry we're squeezing you here a little bit, Tom, just for Tom to maybe update us on NAFB convention and anything else that AIC members need to know about.
Absolutely. Appreciate that opportunity. Thanks you guys for putting this together, panelists, as well as Gardner and Shannon for organizing things today. And I think that it's been, once again, well worth the time, and looking forward to the next webinar as well about trade talk. So speaking of trade talk, our convention, our 80th convention, comes up November 15th through the 17th. We're at the Westin Crown Center in Kansas City. So getting an early celebration in for 80 years of NAFB. Also happens to be the 50th year that we've been at the Westin Crown Center. So we're looking forward to their participation at an even neat level, I think, this year as well. A lot of folks want to know what's on the program. We've got several different newsmaker sessions that are scheduled already on Wednesday, as well as on Friday. We have our Allied Industry Council meeting that will take place at 3 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, the 15th of November. Gardner and Shannon will put together a review of the year, as well as talk about some of those member benefits of being involved with Allied Industry Council. We'll be able to highlight in a lot of detail. The cornerstone, of course, to convention is Trade Talk. Setup for Trade Talk begins at noon on Wednesday, and then Trade Talk itself is from 7 o'clock in the morning till 1:30 in the afternoon. They're in the Century Ballroom and in the ballroom foyer at the Westin Crown Center. And we have 111 booths this year, and we have a wait list for sponsors. And we're really tickled with the way plans for convention are coming together. Kara Hart, our convention chair, has put a lot of work into this, and we're looking forward to executing that. And then just a quick little footnote, you can register online, nafb.com. Under events, you'll see a drop down there that has convention. If you are a Trade Talk only participant, then you should be receiving, or someone in your company or organization should be receiving, an email with a specific link on being able to register for Trade Talk if you've got yourself involved with the Trade Talk booth or with a sponsorship that has a Trade Talk booth then too. So thanks, Gardner.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tom. And I think we're at the top of the hour here. Anita, Brent, and Carey, thank you so much for taking the time out. I know it's a busy time. Thank you for your insights and for taking the time out today. This session will be recorded, and we are getting a lot of views of these recorded sessions. So it will live on as a resource for allied industry members. And Shannon and I would also like to thank Tom and also Aaron Nash at the NAFB office for their help in putting these together as well. So it does take a lot of coordination in doing that. So thank you, Tom and Aaron, for doing that. If you have any ideas for future topics, send Shannon or me a note, and we'll make it happen for you. And again, thanks everyone for your viewing and participation today.
Thank you guys so much.
Great. Thank
Sure
you.
thing. Thanks for inviting us.
Good afternoon.